Hello, friends. Today, once again, we are going to discuss Kashmir. As you know, Kashmir continues to be a running sore in South Asia since 1947. It has been focused more and more since early 1990s with rise of armed insurgency in the valley, custodial murders, tortures, and rapes by armed forces, and other atrocities besides the violence perpetrated by cross border terrorism have since become a routine affair in the valley. Recently, the film Kashmir Files has highlighted it in connection with the plight of Hindu minority in Kashmir Valley. Before it, JNU had brought it to light where slogans were raised in favor of an independent Kashmir. Kashmir issue, a bone of contention between the rival states of India and Pakistan, is the direct fallout of the reactionary communal partition of the Indian subcontinent in 1947, a catastrophe that occurred at the climax of a counter revolution engineered by the British colonialists and aided and supported by the sections of Indian bourgeoisie led by Congress, Muslim League, RSS, and by the bogus policies of the Stalinist CPI. Through brutal suppression of the anti-colonial revolution and fostering massive communal riots, the foreign and local bourgeoisie succeeded in preventing the working class from taking to power in 1947. The reactionary settlement between the two aborted the anti colonial struggle, tore apart the Indian subcontinent to establish rival client states of imperialism, India and Pakistan, and resulted in horror of unprecedented communal riots, a tragedy in human history that took 20 million toll, massive loot, arson, and rapes. Kashmir, left as a buffer zone between the rival states of India and Pakistan, has been the worst victim of this rivalry since 1947. Bourgeoisie of both countries, having contending claims over the territory of Kashmir, has used this hinterland to foist disturbances in each other's countries through proxy wars while deploying heavy armed forces in the region to defend itself. Alongside the rival territorial claims of India and Pakistan over Kashmir, there exists the most genuine aspiration of the mass of workers, toilers, poors, and oppressed people to get rid of the oppressive yoke of the bourgeois rule, exploitation, violence, and bloodshed. The local bourgeoisie in Kashmir attempts to build itself upon exploitation of this aspiration of masses but for its vested interests that are not different in any manner from that of New Delhi or Lahore. The bourgeoisie in South Asia is largely divided in three sections over the issue of Kashmir. The section led by New Delhi wants to keep Kashmir annexed to Indian territory in its stranglehold and under its domination. The rival section led by Lahore, knowing well that it is engaged in a mission impossible, contends for Kashmir with an ostensible purpose to annex Kashmir to Pakistan. Then comes the local bourgeoisie of Kashmir, having its own political aspirations to rule and the stakes in this issue. It demands Azadi for Kashmir, that is, an independent Kashmir under its own specific rule. Needless to say that all of these three sections of bourgeoisie are closely bound up with the imperialist camps in the world. Despite all demagogy, their role and purpose is nothing else other than to act as necessary link between world market and Kashmir to assist in exploitation of its natural and human resources and raise their own bills to the international bourgeoisie for this service. Both India and Pakistan are closely linked with rival imperialist camps. While India has drawn closer and closer to the military bloc of NATO led by US before Ukraine war, Pakistan is embracing the rival bloc led by China and Russia more closely. This proximity of the two countries to heavily armed imperialist powers threatens Kashmir for its geopolitical location in Asia to become a battleground for this imperialist rivalry in near future. While rejecting rival claims of Indian and Pakistani bourgeoisie over Kashmir as completely bogus and baseless, we also reject the call of sections of Kashmiri bourgeoisie for Azadi of Kashmir, the independence of Kashmir. The statelet that Kashmiri local bourgeoisie, led by organizations like Hurriyat Conference or Jamaat Islami, proposes to establish cannot promise anything to the working and toiling people of Kashmir, and this is absolutely clear to everybody. World bourgeoisie as a whole has become counter-revolutionary long back in history, and therefore the nation states under it have also turned counter-revolutionary. These national states, old or new, cannot address the aspirations of the working people, especially the progressive aspiration. Any new nation state founded on bourgeois foundations would be more deformed than before and would render nothing progressive. Bangladesh, for example, that was founded in 1971, has become home to worst exploitation, extreme poverty, communal violence, illiteracy, and diseases. It is live example of such a statelet, a new bourgeois nation. The movement of Azadi of Kashmir, led by local bourgeoisie, is thus thoroughly reactionary movement and a thoroughly counter-revolutionary concept. Instead of uniting various communities in Kashmir, this concept, this movement divides them on religious lines and proposes to establish an essentially religion-based communal state, the Islamic state, fundamentalist state. This movement and its leaders are having very close nexus with imperialist powers, and their aspiration to rule has no match with aspiration of workers and toilers for liberation from exploitation and oppression that is result of operation of capitalism. Kashmiri bourgeoisie has no program different from that of New Delhi or Lahore. It only wants autonomy to place itself at the head of Kashmiri workers and toilers, get rid of its big brothers in New Delhi or Lahore, and connect it directly to world market. It wants to substitute itself for rulers in New Delhi and Lahore at the head of a despotic regime in Kashmir that it wants to establish. Its program does not go beyond maximum autonomy at its worst and a client state for imperialism at its best. Instead of striving for independence and liberty from the yoke of capitalism and imperialism, it strives for closer proximity and direct connection to world markets, capitalism, and imperialism. Its program, totally reactionary and conservative at its very base, promises nothing for the workers and poor in Kashmir. However, the genuine aspirations of Kashmiri people against despotic rule of New Delhi have to be taken into account and they must be addressed to by socialists. These aspirations emanate from military operation of Kashmiri nationality and its forced annexation to New Delhi. Opposing this military oppression and forced annexation of Kashmir to New Delhi, we thus support unconditionally the right to self-determination of all Kashmiri people without discrimination of caste, creed, religion, or community habiting the territory of Kashmir, and support the right to self-determination up to secession from Indian territory. However, we tell the truth to workers and toilers of Kashmir. No secession, no establishment of Azad Kashmir is going to change anything for the working and toiling people in Kashmir. In fact, the regime of bourgeoisie of Lahore or Srinagar would be no different from that of the regime as it exists under New Delhi, and therefore secession from New Delhi doesn't present any solution. No real fight for democracy and liberation of workers, poor, and oppressed in Kashmir can be launched in 21st century on the reactionary, narrow, and conservative premise of bourgeois nationalism. This fight can only be launched on the basis of proletarian internationalism and only as an integral part of world socialist revolution. It need be underscored that the parties and leaders associated with Stalinist and Maoist left opposed this internationalist program advanced by the Workers' Socialist Party and Workers' Socialist TV, the WStv. They instead remain adhered to different sections of bourgeoisie and advocate their program. While Stalin's parties like CPI and CPM throw their weight and support behind New Delhi to oppose the right to self-determination of Kashmiri people in the garb of unity and integrity and sovereignty of India, Maoists support the claims of Azadi of Kashmir being advanced by rival sections of the bourgeoisie rival to New Delhi. Both Stalinists and Maoists thus remain tied up closely to this or that section of the regime of rich and elites. The problem of Kashmir emanates from the reactionary communal partition of 1947. The way forward, thus, is not the cessation of territories and further balkanization of the region, but to overturn this partition and reunite the Indian subcontinent through a socialist revolution. This socialist revolution in the subcontinent would emerge as part of the world socialist revolution to trigger a broader revolutionary offensive of the working class against all capitalist states in South Asia, overturning them one by one and thereafter uniting them in a federation of independent socialist republics. To advance this revolution, we must present and fight for a transitional program in Kashmir and outside that includes, among others, the demand for unity among the Kashmiri workers and toilers, unity among the sections of workers inside and outside of Kashmir, stoppage of all hostilities in Kashmir, immediate withdrawal of all armed forces and all black laws from Kashmir, an end to forced annexation and the recognition of the right to self-determination of Kashmiris and all other nationalities, and that up to secession. This fighting program must first be crowned above all by the clarion call to the working class in South Asia to carry out the socialist overturn in all countries of South Asia and unite them into a federation of socialist republics. Thank you, dear friends, for being with us. Good night, and we will continue to meet and struggle together for a socialist union of South Asian states. Thank you very much. Thank you, friends.